It's time for Reason.
But what else can we do? You and I, the parents. I don't have a kid in school yet. She's 3. She will be going to school very, very soon. Am I going to have to be worried about taking her to school every single day? Am I going to have to be worried about someone wanting to harm her at an elementary school? And as we talk about legislation, as we talk about gun safety programs, as we talk about these things that the government can do to some degree, at the end of the day, it's you and I.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live from the heart of the nation in Wichita, Kansas, all across the Mid-America Network, along with KGPT TV. Good Monday morning. Welcome aboard. It's the day you've been looking forward to all weekend long as you try and get started for the day, trying to figure out what you're going to do for the week, trying to set the momentum, trying to get excited about it. I realize it's a tough one, and that's what I'm here for. It's a Monday morning. Let's go ahead and make it work. What do you say?
And the bass keeps running.
It's time to get pumped up, get excited, get you excited for not just the day, but for the entire week, because when you set the tone once, it's smooth sailing from there on out, baby. Let's make it happen.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
Let's get it started. What do you say? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, we have social media open for you all across the board. Facebook, the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, the Twitter at Hoosier Reason. It does not matter. You can reach out to me however you'd like to, even the email, Andy at KQAMradio.com. I want to hear from you today. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. It is sad that we were not able to make it there. It was sad that it was all over already, but so many great speeches, so many great events, so many great, such a great turnout when it came to the Conservative Political Action Conference 2018 over the weekend, starting on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And it's said, it's done, it's over. I'm going to try one of these years. We have to make it out there. That was my highlight over the weekend, was really watching these videos, watching the speeches, because you want to talk about really getting you excited. You want to talk about getting pumped up. This is my Super Bowl right here. This is listening to the speakers, getting pumped up, listening to the excitement, knowing how many people are actually there. That's what it's all about. And as you know, C-SPAN did actually broadcast the majority. They didn't on Thursday for whatever reason. I don't know why. The rest of the weekend they did. It was fine. Friday was when President Donald Trump actually spoke there, and I loved what he had to say.
Here are just some of the criminal charges and convictions for the aliens arrested by ICE. 11,000 charges or convictions for sex crimes, 48,000 for assault, 13,000 for burglary, and 1,800 for killing people. We're cracking down on sanctuary cities. Can you believe this? Where they protect.
It was fun when he went off cue a little bit. He went off script and he was talking a little bit. He read some stories. We'll play the story a little bit later about the snake. I had never heard of that, but I think it was kind of catchy, kind of fun, and it was relatively appropriate for Donald Trump to be talking about. It was a great deal. Then, of course, we had Dana Loesch that spoke on Thursday that really brought down the house, calling out the media for them loving the ratings during a mass shooting in the town hall for CNN and the lack of town halls for every other event that happens in the nation because they have their political agenda. This is where we get to do those things. I love it. That's the opportunity that we actually get when we get an organization like this. Now, the Democrats, they try and do stuff like this. It doesn't really work. Why? Because they don't have enough substance to do a 3-day convention to actually explain their platform. They can do it on a 160-character tweet, and it's good enough for them. So if you didn't get to watch it, I highly encourage this. All you got to do is go to YouTube and just search CPAC 2018, and you can find all the different speeches. You can hear all the different motivational speakers or political speakers or whatever you want to hear, all the different town hall or the panel discussions that they had, and a lot of individuals from our neck of the woods as well. Former Representative Tim Hulskamp from the Big District number 1 out on the western part of the state. He was there. We had, if you're listening from the Colorado area, it looked like, at least, I thought it was former governor out there. Or former congressman, I'm sorry. I can't think of his name now. Drives me nuts. But he was out there. And there were a few individuals. I believe that even Pat Roberts might have been there talking about egg for a little bit. Maybe not. But Ajit Pai was one of them. He actually received, we had to thank him, for a conservative award that he ended up receiving at CPAC for being the FCC chair and some of the stuff that he's done outside of the FCC, advancing conservatism from here in Kansas, from Parsons, just down the street from the Wichita area, small little town. This is what it's all about. And then, of course, President Trump and Mark Levin and Sean Hannity and all these great names, Laura Ingraham even. That's what it's about. Then you go down. It's really fun, and I told this before, but after the speeches, you go down below, and they have the big room where you get to sign the books, and you get pictures, and you get to see all the radio hosts, and you get to see everybody that's there. It is really, truly a spectacle, and hopefully next year we can be a little more involved with the Conservative Political Action Conference that happened over the weekend.
The Senate Democrats and the House Democrats have totally abandoned DACA. They don't even talk to me about it. They have totally abandoned. You know, we get the reputation like DACA, it's not Republican. Well, let me tell you, it is Republican, because we want to do something about DACA, get it solved after all these years. The Democrats are being totally unresponsive. They don't want to do anything about DACA, I'm telling you, and it's very possible that DACA won't happen, and it's not because of the Republicans, it's because of the Democrats, and frankly, you better elect more Republicans, folks, or it'll never happen.
Getting everybody pumped up for the midterm elections coming up this fall. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Bob O'Prey actually was the name that I was thinking of from Colorado. Bob O'Prey, great individual. Actually, he used to guest host the Mike Rosen show on 850 KOA, so I got to meet him a few times when I was interning out there, and a great individual. I'm really a big fan of him. I know he's been involved in politics out in Colorado for a long time for our Colorado listeners. Bob O'Prey, he was actually on one of the panel discussions talking about energy and oil, I believe. So great event, and hopefully you got to enjoy that just as much as I did. Lots to get to today. Coming up in hour number 3, if you remember last week, we had talked about an issue that relates to energy rates, that relates to the utopian progressives wanting to actually impose their government regulations onto everybody for the redistribution when it comes to the energy and the utility rates, and anybody that actually may try and actually get solar panels and solar energy for their private homes or for their business, and the Kansas Corporation Commission wanting to impose higher utility rates on individuals and businesses with solar panels to make them pay their fair share, if you remember that. And along with that story, we ended up coming across the story about Maize High School wanting to put solar panels on their school in order to help save the environment and cut the costs of electricity rates and so on and so forth. We have the teacher that's actually organizing that, Mr. Stan Bergkamp. He's going to be joining us in the 8 o'clock hour in studio for about a half hour, talking about that project, talking about where it came from, what he wants to do, and how he's going to make it happen without, by the way, public donations, without the taxes or subsidies going into that. It's all going to be private donations. It's all going to be a private project that he's working on for the school. So we'll have him in studio coming up in hour number 3 to talk about that. So I am excited about it. I do need to get to, though, a few political issues and legislative issues that have been happening in the state. And for one of them, I want to relate it to this. Do you ever have that? Maybe you're one of those yourself. Or maybe your spouse is, or maybe your boss, or maybe somebody, when you're working on a project, let's say a home project. You're working on a home project and you're trying to remodel the house, or you're trying to build or help your kid maybe for a science fair project, or you're doing whatever. And you make a mistake. Maybe it's not as good as what you wanted it to be. Maybe you need a couple of versions of it to actually make it improved. Or maybe it takes a while and you have to do this a couple of times. There's 2 different types of people. One of them will actually just, modify it as you go and just tweak it and just kind of go along and adapt as you move along, because you think on your feet and you kind of go about and you always want to improve. You're always looking to improve no matter what you're doing. Then there's the individuals that don't like it, don't like where it's going, and just scrap the whole thing and start over. The question is, which one are you? Well, are you the one that likes to just scrap everything, just start over, just rebuild from scratch? You know what? We made our mistakes. Let's go ahead and just tear it down. I guess some depend on how bad the boo-boos are, right? On how bad the project actually is and whether you want to increase it or not from there. Whereas some are like, you know what, it's fine. Let's go ahead and maybe break it down a little bit and then rebuild from there and just continue on. Medicaid in the state of Kansas is really that type of project right now. We have CanCare. It is a privatized program. Then Lieutenant Governor, now Governor Jeff Collier, was the one that crafted this privatized CanCare program. And now we're looking at CanCare 2.0, trying to increase some funding here, trying to actually make it a little more efficient over here, trying to tweak it just a little bit. There are some, however, that just want to wipe the slate clean, repeal all of the privatized CanCare program, make it back into a public entity, and then do the expansion through Obamacare. This is their goal. And some of the ideas that we have on including some projects, not including some other projects, wanting to increase some of the other projects, there's a big difference between tweaking it a little bit and making it a CanCare 2.0, which I am in favor of, and wanting to make it an efficient program. And on the other side saying, you know what, let's scrap it. Let's make it a public entity again. Let's expand Obamacare. And then let's do the quote unquote Medicaid expansion that everybody seems to want to do. There's a big difference there. And we got to take a break. But when we come back, I want to break down some of the differences and some of the projects that they want to include. We've mentioned these in the past, but yet they're still not going away. Now they're getting close to the discussion on the floors of the legislature to vote on these and actually want to try and expand Medicaid. Do we need an expansion, or can we actually just make the program more efficient the way it is without having to expand the entire project? Andy Hoosier, it's the voice of reason. Great to have you along today. It is a Monday morning. Lots to get to today. Stay here.
You're listening to the voice of reason on the Mid-America Network.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting here on the Mid-America Network along with KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good Monday morning. Better than a shot of coffee or shot of espresso, cup of coffee. I don't drink coffee. I'm still not a coffee fan in any way, shape, or form. I don't know why. If I get a chance, I'll drink some black coffee. I'm not a big coffee drinker. I know everybody is. Everybody that I know, I got to have a cup of coffee. I'm not a big fan. I do have my nice glass of lemon water. Yum. Trying to do the whole healthy thing. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if it is. I just, what do you do? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Trying to do the good thing. First thing in the morning, 24 minutes past the hour. It's great to have you along. Talking about Medicaid expansion in the state of Kansas. Now, many states have tried to do this. Many have not tried to do this. It's kind of interesting. And they've used the emotional argument in many states who have not on why we need to. Because of the fact that there are people that just need help. I'll never forget that town hall discussion that I went to, the public forum that I went to with the legislators here in the Wichita area, and the individual that went up and said, we need to expand Medicaid because I'm a young individual and life is just really, really hard. Life is really, really tough. And therefore, I need to get a Medicaid expansion because I need some help. I'm a young individual. I'm struggling. The life is really tough. It's really hard. And we need the sob story, right? That's what we need. It's a terrible ordeal. I can't survive without it. Nope, can't do it. As opposed to actually just bucking up and actually dealing with it. Look, everybody goes through struggles. Everybody goes through some hard times. And, hey, you know what? There's a difference between expanding a program and making a program more efficient to actually take care of the individuals that need it. I'm not saying, look, we're not anarchists here. And conservatives, sometimes Republicans need to be very careful on when we talk about programs, social programs, and the difference between wanting to eliminate them, which some we do, and then wanting to refine them to make them more efficient and make them more cost-effective, which is a lot of what we like to do as well, depending on the program. Medicaid is one of those. We do not want to get rid of Medicaid across the board. In a theoretical, nice little happy-go-lucky unicorn world, yeah, that would be nice, but that's not going to happen. For one, what we need to make sure of is that it's running effectively and efficiently, so that way people can afford it and actually get onto it when they need to. We don't need the backlogs. The way that Kansas has had the backlogs are getting better because it's a privatized program now. It's getting better. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough care for it. It turns into not medical practice, but it turns into, let's see how many references I can actually get and how many specialists I can refer individuals to. That's what it's turned into, and we don't want a program like that. What we need to do is make sure it's running effectively so the people that are on it, then we can actually say, you know what? All right, let's actually take care of you. If you're disabled, if you're elderly, let's make sure that you're being taken care of. We don't need a 30-year-old on Medicaid. It doesn't, unless they're mentally ill or there's something wrong with them with a disability and they're not able to function in society. And I mean truly not function in society. Not just because we have maybe extreme obesity and you're not able to actually walk to work. You can still do phone banks at home. You can do something. You can do something. We love to play the victim here in the nation. I don't like to see that any longer. But now, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, was the fact that the smoking projects in Medicaid, with either helping to stop smoking, the cessation projects, or the treatment if you actually get some kind of illness because of smoking, and how that's not being included in Medicaid, were actually graded very poorly in the state of Kansas because of the lack a program that we actually have in the state, and they want to expand that. And they've been using that as the argument to expand Medicaid. And just as I used the analogy earlier before the break, there's a difference between wanting to change the program to make it a little more efficient and wanting to overhaul it and then do something completely different. The progressives and the Democrats, they see this as an opportunity. Oh, look, we don't have cessation programs very well to be able to stop the smoking with individuals. So we need to include that in Medicaid. It's not, it's a big program, so therefore we need to expand Medicaid along with everything else and just include that in there. Instead of saying, let's include this in the Can Care 2.0 project. We have the Can Care 2.0 work that we're working on. Governor Brownback, former Governor Brownback, said that we should hold off on Can Care 2.0 because we need to focus on educational funding. I would strongly disagree with that. I would think that we need to prioritize and actually make Can Care 2.0 a big majority of what we want to do. So that way, we can actually focus on increasing the productivity of Can Care, and we can put the educational thing on the back burner with when it comes to funding. Because I don't want to fund any more education because we're already funding it enough, and that's been a discussion that we'll talk about a little bit later. What if your doctor had only one chance per year to treat your blood pressure? According to Kimber Richter, she was embarrassed when her two sons picked up smoking while she served as director of a hospital tobacco treatment center. She had told lawmakers just a week or so ago, what if your doctors had only one chance per year to treat your blood pressure? Instead of being able to prescribe a medication, see how it works and increase the dosage, change the medication, or even add another to make sure you have it under control, what if he or she just had one shot to get it right? That's where we are with smoking cessation benefits for Medicaid beneficiaries. Then let's change that. Let's fix that, if that's the case, with no increase in the budget. If we can do that without having to expand the entire program, let's include that in Can Care 2.0. There is a big difference where we can do it with a better program as opposed to a bigger program. Sometimes bigger is just not better. Sometimes all you got to do is ask your wife about that. This is The Voice of Reason. Lots more coming up. It's a Monday morning.
Keeping reason in the world of politics.
But if you're really angry, why in the first place are you not frustrated and angry to the fact that you have to spend $250 to $600 of your own cash to be able to provide resources in the classroom?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Good golly, I tell you what, you say one thing on the radio and everybody freaks out. Got numerous different messages on social media. And did you just say that? What are you talking about? Everybody with the dirty minds. I was talking about feet, for crying out loud. Guys' feet, bigger aren't always better. You're clumsy. You got to buy the specialized shoes. It's more expensive. Come on. Give me a break. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Lots to get to. I want to shift gears a little bit from the Medicaid expansion. You're more than welcome to call in if you do want to talk about the Medicaid expansion as well. I know it's going to be on the slate soon. And our legislators right now are just, they're wobbling all over the place. They don't know where to go. They really don't know what to do. They're kind of like the 8-month-old or 1-year-old child that's learning to walk, and they're kind of wobbly, and they're not sure which way to fall. They're not sure which way to put their feet. They're not sure what to do yet. That's right now where our legislators are. And it's not a knock on them. I understand that we're kind of in a tug-of-war game. I get it, and we have some great individuals up there, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, when we're talking about a business tax cut, which is needed, it is very much needed. We need to do the tax cut. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then we're talking about more money for education, which is not needed. Don't get me wrong, we don't need any more money there. Then we're talking about a Medicaid expansion, which is not needed. We don't need to do that. It's okay. Then we're talking about the gun safety programs, which is needed. We don't know which way to go right now. We're just kind of blindly shooting in the dark and seeing what sticks, throwing the spaghetti against the wall and seeing what kind of strings actually stick to it. That's where we're at right now. And I don't know if we're going to come out with anything positive this session just because of the fact that we're so scatterbrained. They're trying to, and we talked about the ridiculous bills that have come out so far, like our tires squealing. I'm so glad that now I know that I'm not allowed to squeal my tires when I actually pull out of an intersection. Now I know. Thank you, government. Thank you.
I'm special.
It makes me feel so much better knowing that I actually can't do that now. Then we're seeing the argument when it comes to the guns. And I know that we're sick and tired of hearing about guns, but at the same time, it is a big issue that's not going to go away anytime soon. It's not going to go away yet. We still got a ways to go. And right now they're talking about whether we're going to ban the quote-unquote evil AR-15, whether we're going to ban the quote-unquote bump stock, which sounds like President Trump has already started the process in doing so. We have not passed national reciprocity as of yet. And now what are we going to do with the schools? It took how many school shootings for us to actually have a serious conversation about this? Now, the good news is that when we're having the discussion, we're starting to see the positive movement of wanting to put either more security or more guns into the classroom to make sure this doesn't happen again. That's good news. And for whatever reason, I like the fact that, not the fact that we had these shootings and these disasters, but when we do, it's actually moving in the right direction. And the progressives don't understand it. They just don't get why there's a shooting and then people want to arm themselves. They don't like that. They think that people should be running away from the gun because they want to make it so scary. And you saw the CNN town hall, and you saw the attacks, the vicious attacks that they did on Marco Rubio, on Dana Loesch, that they did on these conservatives actually trying to defend the Second Amendment. But that's not how Americans actually view this. If you talk to anybody in the Mid-America region here, anybody in Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, anybody around here, and you say, hey, we have a rural community, we have a small school. I remember being the older individual. I remember being able to go to school with the gun rack and the shotgun on my gun rack in the back of my truck and sitting there in the school parking lot. I remember taking my gun to school every single day. Because I was going hunting in the morning. I went hunting, I got done with my hunt, and then I came to school, and I still had on most of my camo, and I actually had my gun on my gun rack in the back of my vehicle while sitting there at the school. That is how it used to be, and how many individuals still like to do it. So the question is, when we start talking about arming the school, we're actually advancing. We're having that discussion. We had a shooting in a church just a few months ago. And a good guy with an AR-15 stopped a bad guy with an AR-15. And it could have been a lot worse than what it was. Now, many churches say, hey, you know what? The pastor's going to have a concealed carry. Hey, you know what? You're allowed to carry a firearm in the church. It moved in that direction. And what happened? The progressives automatically stopped the discussion about trying to ban guns in churches because it didn't work out that way. Now we had another school shooting, a devastating school shooting. And what's the discussion? Either ban the assault rifle, which they're trying to do, or it's going to be, oh, look, we need more guns to actually protect the children. States like Wisconsin now starting to actually talk about more security guards in the school. Other states are doing it as well. Kansas, we're talking about the Eddie Eagle safety program from the NRA for the little children, saying, oh, there's a gun, go tell an adult. We're talking about actually arming teachers, giving them the opportunity. And everybody's thrown this way out of proportion, too. They're throwing this way out of proportion. They think that this is going to cost so much money. They think that we have to fund the gun, we have to fund the bullets, and they don't like the fact that we're funding public school teachers in order to purchase a firearm with ammunition to sit in the classroom for them to have something happen to it. They truly think that we're going to have to raise spending for education to allow something like this to happen, which is completely absurd. It is an option for the teachers if they choose to do so. They don't have to. It is not mandatory. If they feel comfortable with it because they shoot guns on a regular basis outside of school anyways, all the power to them. They go through a few courses, the emergency protocol, they go through some training, but they're already familiarized with their firearm. If you want to learn, you have that opportunity to do so as well. It becomes a hobby. Don't be careful because you're going to get addicted to it. If you don't want to, fine. But there is an opportunity. And we can have just imagine if a shooter wants to go into a school or into any building at all, in any way, shape, or form, and they say, you know what, I'm going to cause harm. I want to do something bad. I want to harm somebody the best that I know how to do. Do you think that they're going to second guess it when they say, I could be met with 5 different guns? Or do they think, you know what? There's nobody there that can actually do anything about it. I'm going to be able to get this done as quickly as I can. There's a big difference there, isn't it? From Cake TV, Goddard High School now has special intruder locks equipped on all of its doors. Quote, our teachers don't have to go out in the hallways to look at, they actually have a typo, and that's to lock their doors. Now all they have to do is push. Goddard School District Police Chief Ronnie Lawrence says, quote, it's very, very difficult to train staff and teachers in a short amount of time and give them skills to make sure that they would be effective. Missing the entire point. But that's okay. Not only do those weapons get easier in the wrong hands, plus that adds more pressure to the teachers. How does it add more pressure to the teachers? How? If they have a firearm saying in a locked drawer in their desk, and a shooting happens, they hear the code, whatever, go over the intercom, they hear the shooting outside the hallways. What do they usually do? They usually shut the door, they usually turn off the lights and tell everybody to hide under their desk. Okay, great. Make you feel really, really important and actually productive by hiding under your desk and hoping nothing happens, if they get an opportunity to do that. On the other hand, they're sitting at their desk, they hear the gunshots, hear something happen, they open up their desk drawer, they pull out their firearm, and when the shooter walks through the door, then they can actually fire off a couple rounds. It's done. The threat's eliminated. It's over. Now, obviously, every scenario is going to be a little bit different because that's the way it is. I actually was in a discussion on social media about last week sometime and had talked about there was a story that really burned me up because there was a story from an individual who I know that I went to high school with and wrote a piece into the Denver Post explaining how the shooting that I went through in high school in Bailey, how we should use that as an example for more gun control because she had been there. She's a victim. It traumatized her, yada, yada, yada. It was a terrible thing. And we need more gun control. And we need to show up for the March for Life. And we need to show up for this movement. We need to show up to ban guns. And And it infuriated me because I commented and said, wait a second, nothing could have been done to change the outcome of what happened. Nothing. He used a handgun. He didn't even use the handgun very much, but he used the handgun in order to get in, to scare everybody, and then to end it in the end. That was it. So if you want to ban guns, you're going to have to ban all guns in order to take the handgun away from this individual. And I had someone comment on there and say, Andy, what are you talking about? All shootings are the exact same. I don't understand how each one can be individually different. Which shows that they don't understand the uniqueness of each individual shooting. They don't understand. All they see is the big generalized scarecrow picture. You know, in politics and someone's campaigning, they build the straw man, they build the scarecrow. They don't actually address a specific issue, but they address a straw man. They kind of create a situation and they attack that theoretically as opposed to addressing the realistic, legit issue. And you see it all the time in campaigns. You see it all the time with politicians on both sides of the aisle sometimes. And they won't address the actual issue. They'll create an issue and attack that as a theoretical stance instead of the realistic stance. There's a big difference there. And that's what they've done when it comes to the gun control crowd, when it comes to wanting to stop the shootings in schools, that they don't understand each one is unique. There's a big difference. The shooting in my school, we had a law enforcement officer that was not around at the time, but as soon as the shooting happened and the code went out, then he was outside the door trying to negotiate with the shooter. As opposed to the shooter in Florida, in the officer who ran outside, stuck in his car, and waited for the law enforcement to actually show up. He could have prevented something if he knew he could have gotten there in time, instead of the guy locking himself in a classroom like it did at my school, and he was walking down the halls just randomly firing at people, like happened in Florida. There's a big scenario difference, and you need to be up and aware of all of them. And according to the Wichita Eagle, there's a big, vast division, even in our very own community, about how we would like to go about this. Some supportive of having teachers carry firearms, some of them not supportive of that. The teachers saying that they normally, at least who they quote in the Wichita Eagle, which, I mean, of course, is a little bit more biased media, but they would say, you know what, the teachers actually don't want to do that. We don't want to. We don't like it. We don't feel comfortable doing it. We wouldn't want to if the opportunity was there. We just wouldn't want to do it. On the other hand, some of the quotes in there from students say, you know, I actually would feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that there's a different gun out there other than the one that's directed and pointed at me wanting to cause harm. There's something out there that's actually trying to defend and protect myself. There's a really big difference there, isn't there? Because there's actually, now the other ones would say, we don't want, again, the hypothetical scarecrow being built saying, we don't want more guns in the situation because that could lead to disaster. We don't want more guns in this scenario because that's just more dangerous. Really? When 4 of them are directed to one bad guy and the bad guy is the one causing the harm, I think that we can actually do something positive here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1, broadcasting here across the entire Mid-America Network. Great to have you along today. It is a Monday. Welcome to it, and it's time for News with Rick.
Boom. It's
the humanity!
ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. You must put a lot of work into those introductions and exits that I get on the news here on the
we
Big
got to keep
Talker.
it flashy and exciting.
There you go.
There you go.
Let's get right to it. The fight to become the next face of the Republican Party in Kansas heating up following the departure of Governor Sam Brownback. Kansas City Star reporting that Secretary of State Chris Kobach has long been seen as the GOP frontrunner, but the man he wants to replace, Governor Jeff Collier, is trying to change that and is making strides on the fundraising front. The fundraising front, shall we say. Campaign finance reports from 2017 showed that Collier had far outraised Kobach even after Donald Trump Jr. held an event for Kobach's campaign. Bob Beatty, a political scientist at Washburn University, citing a recent poll, said the two are battling it out. Others seeking to become the party's torchbearer include previous nominee Jim Barnett, former state lawmaker Mark Hutton, and insurance commissioner Ken Seltzer. Heads up, kiddos. Law enforcement across the state buckling down on seatbelt enforcement. Starting today through March 9th, various law enforcement agencies will be around high schools looking for teen drivers not wearing a seatbelt. The High Visibility Seatbelt Enforcement Campaign is a statewide effort to make sure that teens wear their seatbelts, but KSN reports it's also to make sure they realize the importance of it. Could this nasty flu season finally be winding down?
Oh, thank God.
Yes. U.S. health officials on Friday said fewer visits to the doctor last week were for fever, cough, and other flu symptoms than during the previous 2 weeks. News9.com reports that officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said they're cautious about saying the season has peaked, but called the downturn encouraging. And here in the Sunflower State, as cold weather makes its exit, fire danger making its entrance. A heads up, fire weather warnings in effect for much of the western and northwestern quadrants of the state. I'm Rick Everett. That's the news, and I am out of here.
Making it happen today on a Monday. That's Rick with news.
And that's the news.
Appreciate that very much. 316-721-8255. Hour number 2. I'm glad that Rick actually brought one of those stories up when it comes to the seatbelt enforcement for the high school students. In hour number 2, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I want to bring up law enforcement discussions to you. And I know we've had this on occasion on what we should be focused on, what we shouldn't be focused on. And this being a statewide movement now, and this just adds to the story. The high school students driving and enforcement around the schools to make sure that the high school students, the young teenagers, are driving with their seatbelts on. That's something that we should be spending our money on. We'll talk about that in hour number 2. And is that the priority of what needs to be happening? 316-721-8255. Also, I do have, to wrap up this discussion about guns, I know people are kind of burnt out on the guns. There's a lot of different ideas floating around on what we should and should not be doing in the state when it comes to firearms, firearm safety, and school safety for our children. I have an email that was sent to me by one of the listeners, and I love when you do this, by the way. If you write a letter to your legislators, to congressmen and women, to the governor, to whoever, send it to me on what you said to them, and I can relay it. I can read it on the air because this encourages others to do the same. So if I get a chance, we'll try and read that letter as well that he had sent to numerous different legislators and congressmen and women talking about the gun control and pretty much don't tread on me, keep your hands off my guns, and don't do anything about that. So if I get a chance, I'll read that email. Kind of a good way to do it, kind of a great discussion to have as we are trying to find that fine line between what's right with the Second Amendment to defend and protect the Second Amendment and where to keep that safety. And as you know, it's not chaos. It's not pandemonium. It's not nutso when you have individuals wanting to carry firearms in case there is a situation of bad guns in the area. Yes, it is the difference between a good guy and a bad guy. If you want to do harm to somebody, there is a bad guy. If you have others trying to stop the bad guy, then they are the good guys. It's a very simple cut and dry thing. If you're out to cause harm to somebody, then you probably are the bad guy. Just saying. It's not an action movie. It's not a hypothetical situation. It's a realist, scary scenario that we need to be prepared for at any time. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 2 of The Voice Reason coming up. Lots to get to today on a Monday, starting off your brand new week. Let's make it happen. This is The Voice Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But what else can we do? You and I, the parents. I don't have a kid in school yet. She's 3. She will be going to school very, very soon. Am I going to have to be worried about taking her to school every single day? Am I going to have to be worried about someone wanting to harm her at an elementary school? And as we talk about legislation, as we talk about gun safety programs, as we talk about these things that the government can do to some degree, at the end of the day, it's you and I.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2. The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with KGPT TV. Welcome aboard. Good to Monday morning. It's not Tuesday yet. It's not Tuesday yet. It is a Monday morning. Great to have you along today. 7 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you're more than welcome to do so. Starting off your day on a Monday. Let's go ahead and do it. Getting you pumped up for the day, getting you pumped up for the week, setting the tone for the rest of the time because we're that excited, we're that pumped up, we're ready to go. This is The Voice of Reason on a Monday morning.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
There it is, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you're more than welcome to do so. Social media is open, wide open for you. You can shoot me a message all over the place on the Facebook page, KQAM, The Voice of Reason. On Twitter at Who's Your Reason. The Facebook Live feed is rolling as well. Like it and share it. We're doing very good today, and I appreciate that very much with everybody tuning in. Just put a little like on there. Say good morning. Leave a little comment. Hey, Andy, hope you're doing well. Or, Andy, you're a dorky-looking jerk, or whatever you want to say. I don't really care. But leave a comment. Share it onto your wall. Whatever you want to do. We appreciate that very much as we're trying to expand the show on a daily basis, along with, by the way, trying to break the social media algorithms of evil, terrible conservatives destroying the internet. They call us hashtag fake news, but yet their emotional arguments do not actually comply with our intellectual discussions that we have all the time. 316-720-8255. I want to shift gears just for a bit. And I want to ask you, if you listen to other hosts and you listen to other shows and you've listened to even here when we've talked to the military at times and you understand the difference between a politician and a soldier. And the soldier just takes the orders and goes and does something. What that order may be may come from the politician where there's some type of agenda behind it or some type of evilness behind it, or sometimes there's good behind it, depending on who's actually running the nation. And but they give the orders and the military goes and does it. They just go and do their job. If you listen, I forget who the guest was, but last week, I believe it was on Friday afternoon, that there was a guest on Joe Pagg's show, and he had written a book talking about the first infiltration into Iraq and overthrowing Saddam Hussein and taking over certain cities, and then the retreat orders were put in, so then they backed off, and then ISIS came in and took over all of them, and now they're trying to take over them again. And Joe Paggs has asked him, it was a very interesting question, he said, do you feel like you lost when you actually gave up these cities? Do you feel like that all the effort was for nothing? And the individual said no. Said, no, we don't feel that way because that was our order. We accomplished it. We felt good about it. They told us to back off. We backed off. And you know what? It wasn't our deal anymore. We don't care because it doesn't matter. That was our order. We're the ones that follow orders. We don't think. When we're in that uniform, we don't second guess. We just go and do. We're the grunts that just say, hey, when we're told, go do this, go kill this person, that's what we do. And we need to remember that fine line between the individuals that just go and do what the orders tell them to do and the ones making the orders. And if we're upset about something, then we need to think about the ones that are actually giving the orders. And that falls right in line with law enforcement locally as well, or even statewide. Law enforcement on the streets, they do not second guess. They do not have their own decision about these. They're the grunts that have the marching orders. Go do this. This is your job today. Go do it. And they go and do it. If you're upset about a traffic ticket or a traffic violation, if you're upset about a domestic disturbance, if you're upset about something happening in the community, and they're the ones that show up, that's their job. That's what they're supposed to be doing. If you don't like that, then you don't yell at them. You go to the higher ups. You go to the head of law enforcement, or you even go up to the legislators, the politicians that are setting these laws, telling them what they need to regulate and not regulate. I read a story on Friday on the absurd politics right now coming out of Topeka, and one of them was the fact that we're now going to start maybe this doesn't get through, but at least pass the House. We're going to start regulating people burning out at intersections and spinning their tires. And it's going to be a $100 fine, and it's going to go up from there. And we want people to not be doing it because we need to make the awareness that it's really bad for your tires and really bad for the community, and it's a sound violation, and it's burning rubber is just really bad. We can't be doing it. We need a $100 fine. And I pose the question of, is that the proper use of law enforcement? If that's their job, that's what they have to go and do. And they just have to follow the rules. Okay, you know what? You burned out. That's my job to be able to fine you for this. That's what I have to do. I'm sorry. When I think we should be focused on way more important issues. When we're trying to enforce, like what Rick had talked about in the local news update, talking about trying to enforce teenagers and high school students wearing their seatbelts to remind them to wear their seatbelts. Why do we need to remind them? I know that it's going to be the emotional argument of that's my child. I want to make sure they're safe. I want to make sure that they're driving appropriately, and we need to give them that awareness and give them that reminder. When they got their driver's license, they had to take the test. They had to drive a certain amount of hours with a driving instructor, and they wore their seatbelts. They went through the test. They know the material. They know what they're supposed to. That's like studying all semester long and then going into the test at the end of the semester, the midterm test or the end of year test, and saying, I don't know the material. I need you to sit here and go over it with me as we take the test. That's literally what we're doing right now. And it's not a knock on law enforcement in any way, shape, or form, because they're the ones that are just having to go out and do this stuff when the politician passes legislation that says, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and have law enforcement do this. They're already strapped. They're already strapped to the budget. They're already strapped to what their duties are supposed to be. And that's going to be their priority now. Not the domestic disturbance, not the drug task enforcement, not the illegal immigrant that we should be finding, not the prostitution ring, not the whatever else is happening in the community. None of that. We need to make sure that high school students are driving with their seatbelts. Now, I'm one that if it's not going to harm anybody else and it only harms you, then it's up to you on whether you actually want to do it or not. If you want to get in an accident and you want to fly through the windshield, that's your prerogative, not mine. It's not a very emotional argument, but that's the realism of the situation. We don't need to be having more laws protecting ourselves from ourselves, in my humble opinion. And after a high school student who just, by the way, went through the test if they're driving to school, within the last year or so, had the test, took the test, and obviously passed the test. For some of us, like you and I mean, we may not have taken a driving test for 20, 30, 50 years. And we still remember that we need to wear our seatbelts. They just took it the last year or so, and now we need to do an enforcement to remind high school students to wear our seatbelts. Come on. Are you kidding me? That's going to be the priority of our law enforcement. And again, not an attack on law enforcement, because law enforcement has no say in the deal. They're being told this is what you have to do. What we need to focus on is the politician that's creating these absurd, ridiculous laws protecting ourselves from ourselves. There should just be a sign that says, if you don't buckle up and you're in an accident, that's your own damn fault. End of story. It should be up to the parent that says, if you're going to drive in our vehicle, or if we're going to purchase you a vehicle, we're going to make damn sure that you're going to be wearing a seatbelt. Because if you're not wearing a seatbelt and you get into an accident, then guess what? We may just have lost our child. And we're not going to stand for that. So you better be wearing a seatbelt when you're driving to school every morning. Right there. End of it. That should be the end of the conversation. But it's not. And now we need to enforce children wearing seatbelts, high schoolers, teenagers wearing the seatbelts, because we need to make sure to remind them, because we want to protect ourselves from ourselves. 316-728-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Hey, good morning, Scott. How are you?
Well, the whole program is a socialist plot, but Thomas Jefferson said it best when he said that if you trade your freedom for safety, you deserve neither.
Sure.
I think that in this case here, the idea is to eventually make one a slave, and, slaves are never safe. That's just the nature of slavery. Slaves are never safe. So if you think you're going to be safe by them turning you into a slave, you got it all wrong, because slaves are never safe.
Well, that's a good point.
All your freedoms, you're a slave.
You're absolutely right. That is a really good point. I mean, if you want to look back at them, at the Founding Fathers, you're right. When they created the laws for the Constitution, at that time for the Articles of Confederation or for the Declaration of Independence, when they were trying to form our nation, that entire span of time back then, trying to figure out how best going to work, the reason that we have the Second Amendment, the reason that we have laws for restricting the government, not restricting the people, is because the people need to be able to protect ourselves. We've gone to the nanny state now to where we're scared of making a decision for ourselves. Now, it could be a small thing of people saying, oh, that's complete hyperbole. We don't, or not going to become slaves just by making people wear seatbelts and fining them for that. But at the same time, is that really, just on a philosophical stance, is that really where law enforcement needs to have their attention being paid? I don't think it does.
Well, see, they pay a lot of attention in communist countries to every little thing you do, just like in 1984. It's becoming a reality.
Sure.
The police state's real.
The police state is real in that sense. I appreciate it very much, Scott. It's a great point. The laws for little tiny things. Do you realize that, I mean, you've had law enforcement tell you this before, that they could literally find something to pull over for everybody. They could find something all the time. whether going over the speed limit for half a mile an hour, or whether it's because of a taillight out, or whether because they didn't see your seatbelt, or whether because of you were swerving a little bit and you were on the line instead of within the lines, whether you were somewhere, they could find something to pull over anybody for. Because the sticker wasn't right on the license plate when it says that your registration's about to expire. Something. There's always something. And we need to get away from that type of mentality. Do you know in Nevada was actually one of the last states to enforce speed limits because they didn't want the government telling them what to do. If you were driving 90 down a road, that was your own prerogative. If you got into an accident, if you went off the street and went down into the ditch because you were going too fast and you spun out of control, then that was your fault and nobody else's. They were one of the last ones to actually enforce any type of speed limit. Now what do we have here? According to KSN News, Wichita police deploy a new tool to curb traffic accidents and deaths, and now they're going to have the nice little signs, like the construction signs, but the nice little flashing signs on the side of the road saying, hey, make sure to watch your speed. Hey, make sure to buckle up. Hey, make sure to not do this. Hey, make sure to, because we don't want people speeding and we don't want people getting in accidents. I understand the mentality behind it, but at the same time, there's already a speed limit sign. I understand that, but if there's a crazy amount of accidents in a certain area, maybe it's because of the way the intersection looks during certain parts of the day, like when the sun's coming up or coming down and it's in people's eyes. I know that happens all the time. The construction project that I worked on when I was a student, and I was actually interning for the Colorado Department of Transportation, was putting in an overpass because at that intersection, there were accidents all the time because at sunset, the sun was directly right at the corner of the mountain that was coming down, and people couldn't see and they were crashing. They didn't know what the actual stoplight looked like. They didn't know whether it was green or red because of the light. So what did? They put on and off ramps with an underpass bridge so that way no one would have that incident again. Maybe we should look at some of that stuff. Oh, Andy, it's going to cost more construction. Well, sometimes we have to look at that. Or we fall back on you need to pay attention to what you're doing when you're on the road. It's a very simple concept. And if you get into an accident, now I understand there's a difference between laws that protect you from harming yourself and laws that protect you from harming others. And I'm all about trying to prevent harming others. And if you are driving 90 down a road when it's supposed to be 40 and you get into an accident with somebody else in a head-on collision, then that's not going to look kindly upon you. So I see the need for some of those. But at the same time, is it the necessity of law enforcement for the politicians to make the law enforcement? Let's put it that way. The politicians to make the law enforcement try and focus on issues that don't necessarily need to be focused on, in my opinion. 316-720-8255. I want to hear from you. 21 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason on a Monday morning. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, 26 minutes past the hour. Great to have you along today. It's a Monday morning. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, because we're making it happen, baby. We're doing the thing. Advancing conservatism on a daily basis. 316-720-8255. 316-721-TALK. By the way, the analogy that I used earlier in the hour about the legislators, many of them being like the 8-year-old or 8-month-old child trying to figure out how to stand and wobble on their feet, and just not knowing which way to fall, because right now we're just in the tug of war with gravity. As the child is with gravity, they are right now with, do we increase taxes? Do we lower taxes? Do we spend more money? Do we not spend more money? What are we going to do? Only the roll of the dice will find out. They're the same ones, by the way, that are saying, yeah, let's go ahead and use taxpayer money for law enforcement to tell law enforcement to actually go out and enforce the seatbelt thing to try and protect ourselves from ourselves. They're using your money for that because they think it's okay, because they think that's an efficient use of taxpayer money. Now, law enforcement, whether they like it or don't like it, they have to do it when they get that order. It's like telling the specialist on the ground what they need to be doing, which I know happens all the time. If you're in construction, you see that with the engineer telling the worker on the ground actually how to do the job, because the engineer blueprint may be a little bit different from the reality of it, but at the same time, they have to find the happy medium. If you're the carpenter, let's say that you're the cabinet maker trying to figure out how to tie in the entire thing with the walls and with the wires and with everything in, and trying to match it to the actual people there designing the house, and you have to blend the two together. You have to find that happy medium, but when you have the politician making the decisions all by themselves and telling law enforcement what to do, then they're a little stuck. As you know, that we've been classified, quote-unquote, as a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city in the Wichita area because law enforcement is not able to punish somebody for being an illegal alien. And we've talked to Sheriff Jeff Easter about that, and he's like, yeah, you know what? We can't do anything. It's out of our it's out of our hands. It's not law enforcement's fault. It's the fault of the politician not allowing us to do anything, nor do we have the resources, money, or manpower in order to do it. We just can't. We can detain somebody. We can let ICE know, and then whether they actually choose to come out and get them or do something about it is up to them. And after a certain amount of time, we can't keep these people detained. We got to let them go by law. It's not our fault. When we look at, and we've mentioned this topic for a long time on the show, is misdirected anger, misdirected frustration. If we're going to do something, we have to address our frustration at the appropriate individuals or group that actually makes these types of decisions. Law enforcement is not that. Law enforcement goes and gets the job done, just like the military. Military gets their orders, go take this city, done. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, let's go get her done. And that's what they do. Then they say, okay, we did it. Mission accomplished. What's our next order? Pull out of the city. Okay. Let them take it back over. Okay. Done. Mission accomplished. It's the politician that actually made them spin around in circles and actually waste their time, but yet we want to blame the military sometimes. We want to blame the law enforcement here for the illegal alien thing, for them coming down on seatbelt laws when they're just doing their marching orders. Let's have the misdirected anger be changed to the actual redirected anger and the frustration to the right place. Got some calls on the line. Don't go anywhere. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Bottom of the hour news. Lots to get to today. It is a Monday right here on The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Defending the rights of every Kansan.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Good Monday morning to you. 36 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. As you start off a brand new day, a brand new week, let's make it I have a feeling this is going to be a great week. I have a feeling this is going to be a really, really good, productive week for everybody. Get out, enjoy. Let's have a little fun with it. What do you say? 316-721. I got an email over the break from a listener. Why do we call them law enforcement? We used to call them peace officers. Now it's become police officers, and now it's law enforcement. It's a good question. Why do we call them law enforcement? Because unfortunately, we've gone from society to actually just let you do your thing and they're just there to keep the peace. So now we have all these different rules and laws that they need to enforce. Again, not necessarily their fault, but the fault of the politician that says, hey, let's create a bunch of laws. Come on, let's do it. Come on. Let's go ahead and make sure that everybody's wearing their seatbelt. And if they don't, then we can make a revenue off of it. How much money, by the way, show of hands, do you think that the city or the county or even the states make by enforcing laws? Because before it just used to be, hey, do what you will, do what you want. It's kind of a free society. Figure it out yourself. And then, if you do something bad that actually causes harm in the community, then we'll address it. We'll be the peace officer. That's not their role anymore. And again, not their fault. It's the ones who actually pull the strings at the higher ends, where they decide that, hey, you know what? We want to actually create the scenario. If we're going to enforce seat belts, that's not keeping the peace. That's enforcing a law. You didn't wear a seatbelt. Sorry, now I got to pay the state some money because we really need it, so that way you can continue to go to school. Maybe that's how they're going to fund the new education expansion when it comes to their funding. That makes a lot of sense. Let's start punishing the high school student. I mean, like college, you pay tuition to go to college. You do pay some kind of tuition when it comes to high school, but your parents usually do that. But now, if the high school student's not wearing their seatbelt, then we can actually enforce them and punish them. And we can charge them a fee by not wearing their seatbelt, and then they can continue to go on to school because the schools won't have to close because then we'll have money. And if enough students do that, then we can really make some funds, and it'll be fantastic. Then we won't have to raise your taxes, right? Because no longer are they there to just keep the peace and let you live your life. They're there to enforce laws. The law enforcement. And again, not the fault of theirs. We have the highest respect for the military, for emergency personnel, and for law enforcement in all what they do. I love law enforcement. At the same time, though, not big a fan of the politicians that actually pull the strings telling them what they have to do with their job. 316-721-8255. Got some calls lighting up. Let's go right to them, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, Andy, it's Pam.
Well, good morning, Pam. How are you today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Hey, we're having more fun than we should be every day.
Isn't it the truth?
That's right.
Hey, I get so fired up every time I watch and listen to your show. But I'm wondering, how many tickets are we going to give out when we stop a school bus full of kids that have no seatbelts on?
Well, you know, they're talking about that. At the legislative level now, they want to try and when the school districts purchase new school buses, they want to make it mandatory for the school buses to have seatbelts in the school bus. And we've gone over the numbers to where there are roughly 11,000 school buses purchased every single year. It would cost them roughly between $11,000 to $15,000 per school bus to add the seatbelts into them for the purchase of. So, I mean, we could be seeing multiple millions of dollars when it comes to having to force all the school districts to purchase new school buses now with seatbelts.
Oh, yeah. Well, and myself as a private citizen, or you, if you go out and you buy a 55 Chevy, if you're driving around without a seatbelt, if you haven't, they didn't come with them. You have to put them in.
You have to put them in. You can't have the original type of vehicle like they did before, which breaks my heart, too. I tell you what,
it does me, too.
I'm glad you bring up those classic cars. My grandpa built two of them from scratch. His dream car that he's always had, which kind of turned into my dream car as well, is a 57 Chevy Bel Air.
Yay.
And that he's built two of them from scratch, original parts and everything. And it took him a long time. Well, he built one, and then I was so mad because he sold it, and I don't know why he sold it, but he used that money to try and start a new one, and he I think is about ready to finish that one. But yeah, he had to put the seatbelts in there. It wasn't the original style car because it didn't have the seatbelt, so it wouldn't be road approved. And it again, if you want to drive that, first off, the environmentalists will go nuts because how dare you drive a gas guzzler that's a really heavy metal driving down the road like that. But then if you get into an accident, even though it's tougher and it's going to protect you, nope, you can't do that. You can't drive without the seatbelt. And they just want to find ways to say, sorry, we're going to get fined now, so you need to pay the state or the city or whoever.
Well, it all starts out the same. It's like your vehicle years ago, before seatbelt laws and all that, because there were no seatbelts.
Sure.
And all these, all this idiotic government stuff. It all starts out with, well, we're gonna fine you. Well, that vehicle was an extension of your home.
Yes.
Was the law. So they didn't have anything to say about it.
Sure.
They had to have a search warrant, the whole thing, just like if they were coming to your home. Well, then the feds got into it and said, listen, you guys, just like speeding laws, if you don't tell everybody they've got to have seatbelts or this or that or everything else, we will cut off your highway funds.
Exactly.
So we will blackmail you into bending to our will and doing exactly what we say.
It's funny how that works, and no one even thinks about that because we just think, you know what, this is what we got to do on the roads, and that's it, and we'll get in trouble with that. But we don't understand why. That you're right. If I remember again with that car, which is it was a beautiful car. I'm so sad that he sold that because I wanted that car. That was my baby. I love that car.
Those were all beautiful.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. It's so much better than some of the stuff today. I'm not saying the stuff today's bad,
you
but
could kick it and it wouldn't dent, Andy.
I know. You wouldn't total it by running into a bicycle. It's insane.
It's the closest thing to driving an Abrams as you can find.
That's right. But we had those ways, and I mean, when they find ways to say, we're going to threaten you, again, it all comes back to money. We're going to cut off your finances from the federal government. You need to make sure that we're going to now fund all of law enforcement to start imposing its will on you to do that. So make sure you're wearing the seatbelt. You're not driving with your cell phone. You're not texting. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. I mean, you're not putting on makeup. I mean, it should be common sense to a lot of individuals, but they do that. And it's sad now that we just can't have common sense without all the crazy laws. It breaks my heart.
That's why they have control of our schools. They have control of everything in the states.
Sure.
The states basically have no control over the state.
Exactly.
Because we are so blackmailed by the federal government.
And wouldn't it be nice that we can be a little more independent? Pam, I appreciate that very much. You're right. I mean, we need to find our independence as a state because remember, the social compact created by the states to create a federal government, the states were supposed to have more power than the federal government, not the other way around. And when the federal government comes out and says, hey, you need to expand Medicaid. Okay, let's expand Medicaid. We'll give you all this money if you do that. It's kind of like the mob. We'll give you this money. Don't worry. We'll take care of you. Okay, you know what? I want to do something else. I want to end abortions in the state. You can't be doing that because if you do that, then we're going to cut off your funding. It ain't going to happen. What? Hey, let's create some more transportation highway funds. We'll give you some more money so you can create some new highways. But all you got to do, it's a very simple thing. All you got to do is make sure that you're not going to, no one's going to be driving without a seatbelt. And you need to enforce that. That's all you got to do. We'll give you the money for the okay, wait a second. Shouldn't it be up to themselves? Don't be doing that. And if you say you're not going to, then we're not going to give you the funds for it. All comes back to money. 316-721-TALK. Let's go back to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning, sir. It's Drew.
Drew, how are you, sir?
Amazing.
Good.
And you guys are right. It's absolutely right because it is nothing but the nanny state sticking its nose in, and they're not keeping any kind of continuity with it because they were interested in people's safety. They wouldn't at the same time be passing laws that mandate that your car's made out of tissue paper instead of metal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and you're going to get at least, I'm sure today you will get at least one member of law enforcement who will tell you about how they had to go up with a bucket and a sponge and clean up someone who didn't wear their seatbelt. And you know what? I understand that, but I also understand that, when I was in high school, I was there too. I had friends who, the entire family got taken out in a car wreck.
Sure.
And and it wasn't pretty, and it was across quite a distance. And every one of them was wearing their seatbelts. It wouldn't have changed anything. This is about social control. This is about the insurance industry. And lest you think that, this is just about seatbelts, okay, it's not. This is going to be about Medicare. It's going to be about Medicaid. It's going to be about education. And it's all done unconstitutionally because it is illegal. It is illegal.
Well, you bring up a really good point, especially, you're right, when it comes to the outside forces a whole other discussion that we haven't even had when it comes to the insurance liability side and say, well, you know what, if you're going to be driving a car and you're liable because you're not wearing your seatbelt and therefore when you get in the accident, then there's going to be more medical expenses and yada, yada, yada. So you need to make sure, so we're going to enforce it in that sense because the companies don't want to be liable. When it comes to just the parents themselves, are they liable when the kid's driving their vehicle that's owned by the parents and they get in an accident and they're not wearing their seatbelt, and who's liable for that? It goes into this whole, we're trying to CYA, we're trying to cover ourselves because if something bad happens, then we want to make sure that we're not liable for that, and then we want the health insurance needs to go up, and we need to expand government health care, we need to expand Medicaid because if someone gets in an accident, they need help because they can't afford those costs. So it's all about money all across the board.
It is, and it's illegal. It's because it's the unfunded mandate. It's illegal to tell a state we're going to give you money if you do something, or we're not going to give you money if you don't do something. And it is additionally, it gets into our electorate system because You've seen the various insurance companies that say, well, go ahead and we'll give you a safe driving bonus if you put this tracker in your car.
Sure.
Well, what they don't tell you is also that the reason that they do that is because they've gone to politicians A, B, and C and said, hey, by the way, would you like a way to track people? Because we're going to go ahead and put a tracker in their car. They're going to voluntarily do it. See, that's how we're getting around the law part of it, because you can't make a law that says they have to do it, but we can talk them into doing it by offering them a piddle little few dollars savings every day. And by the way, here's the access codes. Thank you and here's your campaign contribution.
Well, that's a great point. Drew, I appreciate it very much. It all comes down again to the PR and to the money. Where's the money going, and how's the PR going to be presented to the general public? It's a very interesting conversation. I don't want to get into the weeds of the conspiracies behind that, but just the fact that we live now in a world where we're scared to make a decision by ourselves and take responsibility when something happens shows where we're at. And I don't know if we can go the other direction. I don't know if we can start loosening that girdle, so to speak, when it comes to some of these regulations, fines, penalties, and law enforcement trying to, or the politicians telling the law enforcement to do something or not do something. Let's go back to the phones, take another phone call before we take a break. Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Wallace, what's going on, sir?
Hey, something I stumbled across, with this Florida shooting and the police screwing up and the FBI screwing up and everybody screwing up except, for guys like you and me. What's real interesting, stumbled across a Supreme Court decision. This is from June of 2005. And this is the Supreme Court ruled on Monday that the police did not have a constitutional duty to protect the person from harm.
Yes.
So when everyone's saying, you guys put your guns away, police should only have guns, the Supreme Court said the cops aren't there to protect you.
Sure.
That's what was ruled. Now, this is the government that says you have to educate your kids, you need to send them to school, but then we're not going to allow you to hardly protect yourself, and we're absolutely not going to protect your kids. We're not going to allow teachers to protect themselves. You have more juice than I do in the media. I've actually been calling and sent some emails to gun manufacturers saying they need to offer the same law enforcement discounts to teachers and concealed carry holders
sure,
as they do law enforcement, because we, the people, are finding out we're the first responders. The police are the second responders. They're the cleanup crew.
Sure. That's a great point. Wallace, I appreciate it. We're way late here. We got to take a break in a minute, but you're absolutely right. When it comes down to it, whether it's law enforcement with wearing the seatbelt, whether it's law enforcement with safety, whether it's the robber coming into your home or a shooter going into a school, at the end of the day, the responsibility falls on us as the individual by ourselves. Let's go to Rick with the news. Yep. Let's try a different one, shall we? Or that one, too. Let's do it a third time. Third time's a charm.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
I have too many buttons here on my button bar.
I am so confused.
What's happening right now? What is this? That was kind of awesome. All right. Yeah. All right.
Hey,
anyways, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Andy. Police continuing to search for 5-year-old Lucas Hernandez, who's been missing now for more than a week. Wichita Eagle reports police continued to ask the public yesterday to submit any tips about Hernandez's whereabouts. He was reported missing on Saturday, February 17th, and extensive search took place last Friday at the Chisholm Creek Park with drones and canines. Investigators now say there won't be another active search until they get another lead in the case. Salina police searching for a suspect in connection to a shooting. Officers responded to a report of a gunshot victim, and the person they're looking for in connection with that case is 36-year-old Darren Jackson. Jackson facing aggravated battery, robbery, and kidnapping charges. He's described as being 5'11", roughly 198 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Jackson considered armed and dangerous, so anyone with information is asked to contact 911 or the Salina Police Department. Wichita police working 3 shootings over the weekend. One shooting on Saturday killed a 25-year-old victim, a 22-year-old now in custody in connection with with that case. 2 other shootings, non-lethal, have landed 2 other people in the hospital, and the search for suspects continues in those cases. And advocates for the senior population in Kansas say that several changes made to streamline the Medicaid application and renewal process have actually made it more difficult for the state's elderly population. Kansas City Star reports that Kansas moved to a new computer system back in 2015 for applying for Kansas Medicaid, otherwise known as CanCare. The state then funneled applications and annual reviews previously handled in regional offices into a single CanCare clearinghouse in Topeka. Well, since then, the number of seniors covered by CanCare for in-home nursing help have decreased, as well as the number being covered for nursing home beds. The director of the Johnson County Area Agency on Aging says that, well, seniors get frustrated trying to get onto Medicaid and eventually become defeated by the process and then just give up. Mm-hmm. And I get that.
Sure.
I mean, having to go through a computer system when you were born, raised, and reared in a life where computers didn't exist, add that to the bureaucratic state issues that are on any computer system. Hell, standing in the DMV line is frustrating.
Which is why you'd think that we'd want to make the system more efficient before we actually expand it to have more people on there waiting on that list that can't get on.
Bada bang, bada bing.
There it is!
That's the news. I'm out of here.
And that's the news.
Appreciate it very much, Rick, with the news. Let's take a break, wrapping up hour number 2. Lots to get to. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. It goes by way too fast, this portion of The Voice of Reason, as it is every Monday, brought to you by the AARP, whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, the Retirement Calculator, getting prepared for your retirement, or just hanging out in the community, doing your thing and doing the best that you possibly can. The AARP is there with you. Check them out, aarp.org/KS for the state of Kansas. And Marin Turner back on the line with us. Marin, good Monday morning to you. How are you today?
Good Monday morning to you. I'm great. How are you?
Hey, we're just living the dream. Now, you guys have done a program for a couple of years now, but some grants to help individuals in their homes, and you're doing that again this year. Talk to us about what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. We're working very hard to help people remain in their homes and communities for as long as they want to, because that's what they say they want to do. And so last year, we offered the AARP Community Challenge Grant. Across the nation, we provided more than $780,000 to states that identified projects that they wanted to work on to help people live in their homes. And here in Kansas, we were very happy to fund the Wichita Public Library Foundation. So we're going to be doing that again. And the information will be online starting March 21st. We want to encourage more people to apply this year. If you have some ideas about how you can either help people live independently in their homes, or if you have some ideas about how to help people move around the community, you have some transportation ideas, or if you have an idea about how to create more open spaces, such as the Grandparents Park that AARP and the city worked on several years ago, then we definitely want to hear from you.
Sure.
So last year, one of the things we heard, people didn't wanted to have more time to think about it. So this year, we're making sure people know very early on. And if you'd like more information leading up to the March 21st announcement, then please call us at 1-866-448-3619, or just log on to our website, www.aarp.org/KS.
March 21st is coming up a lot sooner than some people anticipate, so they probably need to get on board and get some information now if they're going to partake in this before that deadline comes up.
Yes, well, on March 21st, there'll be more information online, and the application will be there. But again, we're encouraging people to start thinking about it now, because if you have a great idea, or if you're working on a project and you could just use a few more dollars to help you move it forward, then, we want to hear about that. And so
Sure.
I'm encouraging people to apply this year again.
I love it. Marin Turner with the AARP. Always great information. Appreciate it very much. We'll check in with you again next Monday.
Thanks, Andy.
Always a pleasure there. Brought to you by the AARP. Check them out, aarp.org/KS for the state of Kansas. Wrapping up hour number 2, hour number 3 right around the corner. Lots more to get to. Kind of a fun conversation when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But what else can we do? You and I, the parents. I don't have a kid in school yet. She's 3. She will be going to school very, very soon. Am I going to have to be worried about taking her to school every single day? Am I going to have to be worried about someone wanting to harm her at an elementary school? And as we talk about legislation, as we talk about gun safety programs, as we talk about these things that the government can do to some degree, at the end of the day, it's you and I.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into hour number 3 right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with KGPT TV, channel 2610, broadcasting live in the heart of the nation right here in Wichita, Kansas. Great to have you along. Great to be with you today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, it's a Monday. Let's go ahead and get you pumped up, get you starting the day, setting the tone for not just the day, but for the entire week. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, or even an energy drink. It's a Monday morning on The Voice of Reason.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we have social media all across the board open for you. Facebook on the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, on the Twitter at Hoosier Reason. The Facebook live feed's rolling as well. If you want to like it, share it, leave a comment, say good morning, or Andy, you're just a jerk. I don't really care what you want to say, but I'd love it if you do leave a comment on there. I do want to get to our next guest. I'm really excited. We have limited time for the next half hour. And last week, as you know, we talked about kind of a fun topic when it came to utility rates and the Kansas Corporation Commission wanting to say, hey, you want to start going alternative energy, you want to start building solar panels, that's great, but we kind of need to raise your rates a little bit so that way you can pay your fair share into the utility company, and then we can redistribute that savings to the other people that can't afford it. So you being the evil, rich, and elite that actually want to do alternative energies, that want to get a windmill, that want to get the solar panels, that's awesome. But if you have to substitute any, then you need to actually pay higher utility rates than everybody else. And then we saw the story that fit beautifully into it was the fact that Maize High School is looking to put the solar panels on to the school to help save utility costs. And we can go towards the environmental movement of saving the earth. We can go into the financial argument of trying to save money. No matter what your priority may be in that situation, it's important to look at it, and it's important to have that conversation. And the individual that's starting this initiative, this project, he is the physics teacher at Maize High School. He's Dr. Stan Bergkamp in studio with us. Hey, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me in.
I appreciate you coming in here very much so. It is exciting that we're looking at an initiative like this. Yet it is troubling that the question is it going to be worth it in the end? So before we get into that, let's talk about first where'd this idea come from? Let's say, you know what, let's put solar panels on the high school and let's save some utility costs.
This whole process started for me back with my father, and he grew up out in Cheney, Kansas, and where I did, and he was a simple farmer, but always stressed to us kids that you always leave the earth a better place than how you found it.
Sure.
Through soil conservation, whatever that process is. And so when I looked at all of the studies as far as potential climate change, and you can argue that all day, one way or the other, but there's also, like you mentioned, the financial savings. And so about 18 months ago, I had solar panels put on my own farm up on the northeast side of town. And I saw the savings, and I've taught at Maize for 25 years. It's a great school to work at. I teach great kids, a very supportive administration, great parents. And I don't have any kids of my own, and so I saw this as an opportunity to leave something for the district and for those kids,
sure,
and make an impact for their children and their grandchildren, and try and do something to change the paradigm about how energy is produced. And so last November, I went to the school board and offered to start what we call the Maize Solar Initiative and the See Beyond campaign to raise $385,000 to install it'll be the biggest solar panel system in the state on a single high school, 240 kilowatt system.
Wow.
Which will generate about enough electricity on an equivalent amount to keep Maize High School itself off the grid for about 40 days out of the year.
Wow.
If you look at that.
Sure.
Save about 270 tons of carbon dioxide emission, and also because it's a direct production of electricity, unlike when you produce electricity from coal or natural gas, you have to boil water, turn it into steam, it turns the generator, and at the end of the day, this is what I tell all my physics students, at the end of the day, you can make toast.
Sure.
And so with this, the solar panels are sitting right on top of the school. It's a direct production of electricity. You don't have to boil water. You don't have to transmit it. It's all right there, and it just made sense to me. And so the school board gave their blessing and said, hey, go out and knock yourself out. So far, we've raised about $53,000.
Very good.
A week ago Thursday, we got the endorsement from the mayor of Wichita, Jeff Longwell, who got his political start out at Maize as he was president of the school board out there. And so that was a huge endorsement for him to come out and say, hey, let me help you out. I think this is a great deal. And this is what I tell people, is that this is not about Maize High School. This isn't even about Maize District. This is about changing the paradigm about how schools have the capacity to produce electricity. You have the environmental aspect of it. And I saw how excited my own students got when I explained the process to them. My students were like, wow, why haven't we been doing this for years? And I was like, that's a very good question.
Sure.
And so, I saw the enthusiasm from my kids. I saw the enthusiasm from the community, and it just seemed like a natural fit. And one of two things will play out. Either I'm going to be viewed as a visionary or the village idiot, and then there's not going to be a lot in between.
Well, I love the fact that, first off, I don't think you're going to be considered the village idiot for something like this. It's going to be a huge opportunity. And whether like you mentioned, the climate change jingle, whatever the vision that we have for it, there's a need to look at this. And what I love about it, and I'm glad you mentioned the students and how excited they are, is because it takes the teaching and the learning from them to a whole nother level. It's not sitting in the classroom reading a book or doing a lab experiment in there, but then forgetting about it as they walk out the door. What they see when they see the results of it and they see this come to fruition at the end is that they actually did something of substance, and they're going to be very proud of that. And I think that's going to help them take that to the next level down the road when it comes to any of their education, because they understand the benefits of seeing the end product rather than just reading about it in the book.
Well, and whether it was my current students, like, for example, I had about 90 students in the classes that I taught through the middle of December. And so they heard the story and they saw the passion. And those kids alone donated close to $3,000 for the project, just those 90 students alone. And so, I reached I don't know how many former students that have reached out to me and said, this is an amazing thing. So these kids want to come, they want to give something back because they're worried about the environment. They want to give and be part of something bigger than themselves.
Sure.
And this has given them that opportunity.
Absolutely. How involved throughout this process will the students be when it comes to the fundraising or even the layout of it or the structure? If this ends up happening towards the end, do you see the students being heavily involved in the whole process from beginning to end?
Not necessarily in the design process. Now, like, for example, my physics students, because of what I'm teaching and I'm explaining it, they have they understand what's going on.
Sure.
But the long-term goal is that we develop an entire STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Mm-hmm. We develop an entire curriculum that will be used basically kindergarten through seniors.
Okay.
Because each school is going to have the capacity to log in and see exactly what the energy production is throughout the day. How many kilowatts are being produced. They can graph it. They can and it's cool because, like, even if a single cloud goes over that system,
sure,
you'll see a drop in that production curve.
Okay.
And so, they can graph it throughout the year. And kids are drawn to this because they go, wow, this is something
you can
new.
See it.
Yeah, and we're the only school that has it.
Sure.
And so the kids want to be a part of this.
Sure.
And they want to be able to say, hey, I did something to get this thing started.
Let's talk about the actual physics of that for a little bit, as some may not be aware or may not be familiar with solar power itself, but the panels are built and it uses that. But as you mentioned, I mean, if we have some cloudy days, the energy production goes down a little bit, maybe during some times of the season when we have a little less sun rays. But talk about the actual process of what this could do and the kind of energy it can produce.
The short process is that the sun produces bundles of energy that in the science community we call a photon,
sure.
Okay, which is just basically a bundle of energy. That's all it is. So the short version is that the solar panels are built with material that when that bundle of energy hits the solar panel, it excites an electron, which is one of the fundamental subatomic particles of the universe, and that electron gets enough energy that it basically jumps out of its normal state. And that's happening throughout this entire panel. And then you basically harness that excited electron and then use that to produce electricity.
Sure.
And so that's the short version, is that the electrons are sitting there minding their own business. All along comes a photon. Wow, here's a bundle of energy. It's like giving it an energy drink.
Sure.
And then it jumps up, and then you have the capacity to take that and then to produce electricity
and use it.
from.
Yes. And use it. Have you seen a progression in the technology with this over the years? I know that we've talked about the progression of either wind energy, nuclear energy, solar energy, and it's taken some while, but now we're starting to see it go a little bit more mainstream for the consumer. How efficient is this technology right now?
The efficiencies right now are about 25 to 30%. The efficiencies themselves have somewhat plateaued, but the reason that it's now become more mainstream is because the cost has come down so much. If you look at a graph of time versus cost, so the short version is that about 12 years ago, to install a solar panel system cost you about $9 per watt installed.
Okay.
Just using that as a benchmark.
Sure.
Okay. So then as you go forward, that cost each year has dropped. And so for schools, the break point on being cost efficient is about $2.50 a watt installed. This system at Maize High School is going to be at about $1.65 per watt installed.
Okay.
And so 5 years ago, I wouldn't have tackled this project because
wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it. Yeah, you'd feel good. Yeah, you could reduce carbon dioxide emissions, but financially, it doesn't pay.
Sure.
Whereas now, because the cost of solar panels has come down so much, then now it's a cost-effective system to look into.
And see, and that's what I'm all about, is if it's going to do something worth the financial end of it, to see the ends justify the means, and I'm all for something like that. And that's what we need to work towards, because that's going to be the natural transition between the two. We got a phone call on the line. Is it okay to take a phone call?
Yes.
316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I'm just doing great. Got a question here. Will this solar system have any storage capacity for short terms, capacitors or batteries? Because obviously it won't work when the sun isn't out at night. But is there any carryover effect, for, twilight, type of thing? So that you aren't having to go on the grid, instantaneously.
Oh, good question.
That's a good question, Jim. The school systems are unique in terms of our usage curve. So if you imagine how much energy a school is going to use versus how much energy is going to be produced by the solar panels, it matches it perfectly. And so, and especially allowing for the cost of batteries, we're basically going to consume instantaneous any amount of electricity that we produce. And so it just doesn't financially make any sense as a school to invest in a capacity for a battery system. Now, as a teacher, when my solar panels are producing electricity, I'm not home, but Kansas is a net metering state. And so basically what that does is that the electric company acts as, like, to a certain extent, like a battery. So if I produce electricity, my meter runs backwards. But then when I get home, then they basically give that credit back to me. And so from a school's perspective, we're going to use all of that energy directly as it's being produced.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it doesn't make any sense. I never even looked at batteries because I knew we'd be using this energy directly as it's being produced.
Sure, instead of trying to store it up. Great question, Jim. Appreciate that. 21 minutes past the hour. We got to take a break. We got Stan Bergkamp here for a little bit with us longer, talking about the solar panel project at Maize High School and the positives and negatives, especially when it comes to the utility costs that we may see. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we come back as well. Your thoughts and calls, we want to hear from you. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome into The Voice of Reason, 26 minutes past the hour. Great to have you along today. It's a Monday morning. I like the excited energy. It's like that energy drink being ingested into the solar panel. Kind of nice, ain't it? You feel good this morning. 316-721-8255. Dr. Stan Bergkamp in studio with us here with Maize High School, talking about the solar panel project. And we do have a caller on the line. Let's go right to them, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Monday.
Hey, good morning, Myron. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm so pretty I have to be good.
That's a good day there. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to compliment of course, I didn't catch his name, the teacher, because as he pointed out, 5 years ago, didn't make economic sense. Now prices are down, it makes sense. And it's something where not only can the STEM students learn from the option, but the regular student can see how you calculate, is it worth the investment?
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago, no. Now, yes. So there's a lot of lessons throughout school that a solar array can be used to teach. I think it's marvelous that, A, he has continued to do the research to know that it's economically viable. 2, that the taxpayers aren't paying for it because it is a little bit of an experiment. But finally, the educational opportunities throughout the school, I think, will be massive. And as I have a daughter that teaches in the Maize system, I have every confidence that it's going to be a marvelous learning tool.
Very true. Myron, I appreciate that very much. You're absolutely right. I mean, other than the physics side and the science side of learning about this, learning how the technology's grown, learning about actually the process, how it's done. Yeah, you know what? Hey, look at how efficient the equipment was then as compared to look at the equipment now, and look at how much it's going to cost. They get a little life lesson, which I mean, I don't know. Do the schools do kind of like a budgetary class now? I don't know if they do or not. I mean, this is a help on look at the money saved from the school. Look at how much is going into it. And look at what we could be doing here. This is fantastic.
The economic side, like Myron said, can be covered on a personal finance from an economic standpoint, from a social studies perspective, from a historical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You can develop this in any manner that you want. But that's the beauty of it, and the kids are excited about it because they're looking at this going, wow, hey, this is on my school. This is something that I'm proud of. This is something I'm a part of.
Something unique that no other school in the states do. We got to take a bottom of the hour break, but when we come back, I want to shift gears a little bit to that financial side. I want you to talk a little bit about the solar panels that are on your house, as you mentioned, and kind of what went into that, and the finances that even went into it. And then I want to get to the idea of the utility rates going up for some that want to try and go that direction, as we talked about last weekend, the punishment, I guess we could put, for individuals wanting to go to the solar panel. Plus, if anybody wants to help out with the project, actually understand it more, or financially help it out, we'll get that information out as well. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more to get to as we wrap up the show today. It is a Monday on The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. your personal political therapist. Give him a call at 721-TALK.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. It goes by way too fast, having way too much fun, as we usually like to do. 35 minutes past the hour, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you have a question, one more segment here with Stan Bergkamp. He's with the physics department with Maize High School, and we were talking off the air a little bit about some of the different types of alternative energy. Candace has done very well, I think, in increasing the use of wind energy, although a lot of that energy goes outside of the state, but us to create a new industry for the manufacturing and the building of. You go into the western part of the state and near Garden City, and I remember seeing all of the different windmills that they're putting together and shipping out. Kind of a really unique opportunity there. The nuclear energy you had mentioned is kind of phasing and dying out. Why do you think that is?
I just think because so many people have a negative perception of it, whether it's Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and they see the old designs, which weren't necessarily that good, and they had some structural problems to them.
Sure.
But if you look at the new designs, they're very, very safe, they're very efficient, but the process to get the permits and everything else is just so cost prohibitive and so time consuming that I don't think anybody's going to do it.
It's sad because I'm with you. I think that I would love the opportunity just to start opening up the door for nuclear energy and have the nuclear power plants all over the place and us be able to generate so much effective energy in that way. But you're right. There's just a negative mentality to it, to where people are just scared and don't want to be around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the new designs, and I mean, as a physicist, I've looked at them, and if you wanted to put one in my backyard, I'd be happy with it.
Sure.
Because I think they're that safe.
We need to start harnation black hole energy from out there. There we go. We can start working on that.
We can't even find dark matter, let alone harvest the energy from it.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. One of these days, maybe not my lifetime, but we'll make that happen. Let's talk about the financial side of this. Talk about, first off, you said that you have solar panels on your home.
I did. In July of 2016, I had solar panels installed on my place. And I immediately saw the savings. I got about a 10% reduction in my electricity cost each month. And so I went from having basically an electrical bill of, say, $150 a month down to about $50 a month. So there's about $100 a month savings there.
Sure. But now there is the movement, whether it's going to happen or not, who knows, but the Kansas Corporation Commission talking about individuals with solar panels on their private homes, that we potentially need to raise the utility rates for them because they need to pay their fair share into the system and jack up that rate. What would that do to you if that ends up happening?
I spent, ironically, last night going through my electrical bills, and there's only been 2 months out of the past 12 months when I have actually generated more electricity than I used.
Sure.
And so I was still charged the minimum monthly fee of $28 a month. I was still billed for the demand hours, 10, 11, whatever that is. Even though I produced more electricity than I used, I still got charged for that.
Sure.
So for 10 months out of the year, I'm still buying electricity. It isn't like I'm a net producer of electricity for the utility companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I know the proposal was to raise that rates by 50%. If you did that, I would probably have to take my solar panels off because it would just not be cost effective. Now, with that said, if they would grandfather that in, and because I made my financial decision, and that's what it was. It was a financial decision.
Sure.
Based upon the idea that Kansas is a net metering state. And so I just think they would have a hard time justifying that, because if you portray me as saying, "Oh, I don't pay anything for my electricity," yes, I do. My electrical bill in January was over $300, and so yeah, there are some months in May through September. Yeah, I don't consume a lot of electricity. I produce some, but there are other months where I'm a net consumer of it.
But you're paying for it every month, whether you use it or not.
Yes.
Already.
To a certain extent. Yeah, I reduced the amount. Basically, utility company looks and says, okay, Stan Bergkamp, your solar panels produced 400 units of electricity. I consumed 500. okay, we're going to bill you for 100. So, but I'm still being charged the minimum monthly rate. I'm still being charged for the demand hours. And so it isn't like I'm not paying for the infrastructure. And that's their argument. And I understand utilities companies have to make money. Sure. I'm not disputing that. But for me as a consumer, and also as far in terms of a bigger picture, to argue that you've in effect taken Kansas out of the solar panel equation, if this is what you're going to do, you are effectively going to kill an industry, which I don't think is going to benefit the entire state of Kansas, because a buddy of mine works for a jewelry company, and they're moving their whole headquarters to a state that's solar energy friendly. Mm-hmm. And so I think businesses are going to look at that in terms of locating to the state, because I think businesses more and more want to be perceived as being environmentally friendly. And if they pass this, I think you're going to see businesses, number one, not invest in solar, and then you're going to see businesses not even consider moving to Kansas, because if they want to be able to have solar panels and build their entire building this way, and yet you disincentivize them, then I think in the long term, you could potentially harm the economy of Kansas.
Well, you can harm the economy, you can harm the business incentive, you can harm just the students that are looking out and saying, hey, you know what, here's some opportunities for us to do something great, something special, but is it really going to be worth it? Because I guarantee that if we're going to go towards punishing private individuals with their homes, if we're going to go towards potentially punishing businesses wanting to go that route, and even public schools or public buildings, and say, we're going to start charging you a little bit higher rate because you still got to pay your fair share, even though, like you said, you're paying for electricity with just the general costs, even when you're not using it for a month, and them saying you're still not paying your fair share, you're going to kill off the opportunity for the industries to grow and the potential for new industries to want to come here.
And that's the concern. It's like, and I'm not saying that the electrical companies should make a profit. God bless you. It's what they do.
Right.
But if you look at how many individuals are really producing electricity from solar panels, I mean, I can think of myself and one other person and maybe a handful of companies that are using solar panels. And so it isn't like all of a sudden you have half the houses in Wichita producing electricity from solar panels. It's such a small percentage. Mm-hmm. And the industry, you look at Colorado, you look at California, you look at Nevada. Nevada tried to do the same thing. And there was a popular uprising in Nevada.
Sure.
Nevada tried to go from being a net metering state. And the people were up in arms, and they reversed that decision. And so, if they're looking at this, I would say, look at what happened in Nevada. Look at when they tried to reverse Nevada being a net metering state. Go back and look at the uproar that happened out in Nevada.
Mm-hmm. We got just a couple of minutes left before we got to let you go. Mr. Bergkamp here with us from the physics department at Maize High School. Again, you've now released this idea to the public. When's the goal? What's the goal that you need to have, and when would you like to hit that financially to make this happen?
Financially, in a best case scenario, we would have all the money raised by August. That's an absolute best case scenario. We can start to put solar panels on the school, and that's if we raise all $385,000. Even if I can hit $100,000, that will allow me to start the process. We can build the electrical infrastructure. We can put some of the solar panels on, and that will still save us about $1,000 a month. And we can even use that money then to eventually buy more solar panels. And that's the ultimate goal, is to use the savings to put panels on every school within the district, and we'll be the only district in the state to have that opportunity.
Sure. If people want to get more information from the project or want to help out, how can they do so?
We have our website, www.cbeyondmaize.com. They can go there. There's opportunities to donate. There's a promotional video. There's a video down at the bottom that I've made that I speak specifically to my students. I made a video specifically where I speak to the parents of my former students, because I don't have any kids of my own. And so this is the legacy that I want to leave. And so if they want to get involved, that's the easiest thing to do. Go to www.cbeyondmaize.com.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming to studio, enlightening us on this. We'd love to get you back in as the process happens and get some updates from you.
Thank you, Andy. It's been a great time.
Hey, appreciate it very much. 45 minutes past the hour. Take one more break. Wrapping up the show today. It's a Monday on The Voice of Reason.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today, about 9 minutes to the top of the hour. Great to have you along today. So much fun getting through so much information. We appreciate it very much with Stan Bergkamp, professor, teacher at the physics department at Maize High School. And great information when it comes to, look, he's got it on his own private home, and look at that. We raised the utility rates, and it's not even going to be worth it. He's going to have to take them down. The fact that individuals are in that industry or want to get something in that industry, and they end up having to pay for the fees, have to pay for the maintenance, and they're not even using it. Why? Why would we do that? Now, when it comes to the finance for education, as you know, we're looking at, we have to increase $600 million plus for educational finance, which is absurd. We don't need to be doing that. Why don't we look at ways to save money in the long run? We start saving money. Look, what did he say? $65,000 a year we could be saving potentially by solar panels on the high school, just in utility bills. That could go towards, I don't know, maybe the lab stuff or the books or the Kleenexes or the crayons in the classroom that the teachers wouldn't have to pay out of pocket. Shocker, right? It's insane. Why do we need to raise your taxes when we could be doing initiatives like this? It makes no sense to me. Why do we need to be raising the general public's funds for something when we could actually be containing, we could be consolidating, we could be shortening, we could be cutting, we could be doing productive things instead of actually expanding it? It goes back to the very first discussion that we had in the 6 o'clock hour today when it came to Medicaid expansion and wanting to create the cessation programs to try and get people to quit smoking. Why does that need to be only in an expansion of Medicaid when we could just improve it with CanCare 2.0? Why don't we do that rather than saying, hey, you know what, let's just start all over. Let's go back to the public sector. Let's go back to taxpayer funded. And let's go back to actually just making it expanded so that way we get more money from the government. It's funny how that works, isn't it? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, talk about that discussion or whatever else is on your mind. Over the weekend, I do want to touch on this just for a minute and get this out because I thought it was kind of fun. Over the weekend, as you know, the Conservative Political Action Conference happened in Washington, D.C. or Maryland at the hotel, and President Trump spoke on Friday, and he told a story. Now, I've heard different variations of this story, but this one was kind of an interesting one, so we'll play that clip when we come back as well, called The Snake, and apparently he read that quite a bit during the campaign trail, and we'll do that in just a second, but I do want to take a phone call, 721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen.
Good morning, Helen. How are you today?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
We are total electric, our house, and, we pay ranges from $250 to $300 a month for electricity.
Sure.
So, and then they put in all these wind generators, but we haven't seen our prices go down.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
So I doubt that them starting to charge these very few people in Kansas with solar panels, I really doubt that our electric bill is going to go down.
Yeah, you think that they're going to drop and say, hey, you know what, we're getting some additional money from people that aren't even using it, so we're going to head and lower your rates a little bit. I highly doubt that that's actually going to happen.
Me too. I doubt it.
Yeah, funny. Helen, I appreciate that. You're absolutely right. Do you really think, and that's the argument that they use, hey, if we actually increase it there, we can redistribute it. That way we can apply it to you. You're not going to have as many you're not going to have the highest rate. We can drop it down a little bit. Do you think that's going to happen? Nah. They're going to say, oh, yeah, well, we came up with some other costs because we had a lot of maintenance. We allowed ourselves to upgrade and get new. Now, again, I don't care about the revenue. I'm all about revenue and profits. We're capitalists here. That's what we do. I'm all about profits, but at the same time, it's a public utility company. which means the public utility company, other than being able to have enough revenue to come in and operate to stay open, there's no need for massive amounts of profiteering revenue to happen for a public utility because it's supposed to be a service to individuals who choose to actually have it instead of being forced to do it and then pay for it even when you're not using it. 316-721-8255. I want to play this clip. I thought it was kind of intriguing. It's about 2 minutes long, but it's President Trump at CPAC on Friday when he spoke talking about immigration.
Immigration. On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-hearted, frozen snake. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Poor thing," she cried. "I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. Take me in, O tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the vicious snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a comforter of silk and laid him by her fireside with some honey and some milk. She hurried home from work that night, and soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. "Take me in, O tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the vicious snake. She clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried. "But if I hadn't brought you in by now, surely you would have died." She stroked his pretty skin again and kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. "Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman," sighed the vicious snake. "I saved you," cried the woman, "and you've bitten me. Heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die." "Oh, shut up, silly woman," said the reptile with a grin. "You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in."
Think about that as you start off your Monday. What do they say? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Except for letting them into your house, of course, and being able to take advantage of you in any way, shape, or form. Think about that as we think about immigration reform. Think about that as we talk about how we allow the politicians to regulate every day of your life. How you allow individuals to come into the country that we don't know who they are. We have no idea. Think about that as you set the tone for your brand new week. This is the Voice of Reason. It's time for you to speak up. Speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason on KQAM. Have a great day, everybody.